I'm going to see if I can get a video of how long 10 minutes in the garden accomplishes. I'm going to try to do it so that you don't get a continuous image of my hiney. But we'll set the timer for 10 minutes and see how it goes. Worst thing that will happen is I'll have to do it over. So here we go, 10 minutes on the clock. I am using some tools, even though that's not 100% necessary. I'll do some of it without. But weeding's a pretty easy deal in between the rows. We've got some peppers going here, squashes and pumpkins over on this side. To give an example of what a difference 10 minutes in the garden can make. You don't have to come spend hours. And check your fitness guru on your wrist or on your phone, and it will tell you how many steps 10 minutes in the garden will give you as an exchange for your fitness goals. Time in the garden is good all the way around, and here I am working without my gloves on, so my hands are going to get dirty, but that's okay. I also don't have my shoes on, so my feet are going to get dirty too. This was the part of the garden that last year had the tomatoes. You just kind of find a spot to put your weeds in a pile. Have a bucket, that's awesome. We have a lovely foot traffic. I'm sure that you're hearing that too. There's always those people that have to show off how loud their truck is. I'm not sure why that is, but that's okay. I was young once, I think. I liked to drive 100 miles an hour everywhere I went. But even if you come through and just grab the big weeds, but don't forget to stand up and stretch back once in a while. Take a few pictures of the plants that we got here in the garden that are going to end up feeding our neighbors, people in our community. And it says community, it doesn't say only if you don't have any money or those kinds of things. Community is a community, and the garden is here to feed all of us. But if the food gets taken over with weeds, there will be no food, unless we figure out which of the weeds are edible. Got some little green peppers in here. Volunteer tomatoes from last year. I'm kind of excited to see how they turn out and what they turn out to be, because anything that's tough enough to survive a winter in Maine and grow again is a good thing in my book, and I'm hoping that they will be tasty. We will see. Hopefully they were some heirloom varieties that we can save some seeds from, and they'll be yummy, and we'll plant some again next year on purpose. Love to see some bodies in the garden, or see that some bodies have been here. I like to come early in the morning because it's cool. Wednesdays, starting in a couple of weeks here, Wednesdays 10 to noon will be the garden outreach days. We're hoping that volunteers from food pantries will come. Volunteers from the hospital will come. And whether you come to harvest for yourself or for a pantry, it's all good. We've got basil coming in here. It's cute, planted basil. We did that on purpose. And then the volunteer tomato right in the middle of it there. I'll probably leave that to see what happens, because tomatoes and basil like to grow together. Up it comes. Look at that. I haven't even spent 10 minutes and I'm already way down here. Pretty awesome. How little time it takes to make the garden look beautiful. If 6 people come and spend 10 minutes each, that's an hour in the garden. If I can cover a couple of feet in 10 minutes, that's 12 feet of garden space that gets cleared in an hour. Some places have more weeds than others. My co-master gardener, Sally Shepherdson, spent the early part of the season up at the top of the garden around the tomatoes and broccoli, and weeded down to the hoops where the pole beans are growing. And I don't know how much time she spent, but it looks beautiful up there, and I'll probably take a walk up around there at the end of my 10 minutes here when time goes off, to say I've spent my 10 minutes. I'll do some close-ups of the plants. So we can come to weed, that's some kind of reference as to what needs to stay and what needs to go. We've got a couple of spots where the plants are coming nicely, and I'll show you that too. Lettuces. My young friend Margaret came and helped to do some planting at the beginning of the season, and the lettuce came up wonderfully. We've got some lettuce, some greens, and other things over there. I'll show them to you. But these little guys in among the plants just kind of loosen the dirt. You shake them out. You turn up the roots. Sun, if we have any, will kill them. If they re-root, we'll get them again next time. If something breaks off, grass is noted for that. It likes to be nicely, deeply rooted and just break off like you're kind of hand mowing it. That's okay too, because that tells the plant that it's got to do something else in order to grow something. In around the plants, hand weeding, or very, very careful with your hand tool. I've got a little rake deal that I like to use. But right up next to the plants, please do it by hand. That gives less disturbance to the roots. And break off come and get the camera. And we'll brush my hand off here. Good thing everything's washable. But there's 10 minutes. Got the majority of the weeds from where it says herbs down to this volunteer tomato, which is right here. And there's enough other things growing around it that sometimes it's hard to see. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 right here in this little area. And but there they are. I'll put a fence around them. And I'm going to just pull a few more weeds while I'm just standing here, because that's how I am. But 10 minutes in the garden really is not a long time, and you can get a lot done. So any of our neighbors and friends that would like to do that, feel free to come. You're all grown-ups and responsible people. You don't need a supervisor. This is basil coming up in here. Looks really nice. There's that volunteer tomato I told you about. Just pull these little bits of grass. And this is called lamb's quarters, which if it was in another place, we could let it grow and harvest it and put it in a salad. At least I think that's what it's called. My grandmother always called it pig's ears, but I'm not sure why she did that either. But she was my gram, and so she could say whatever she wanted. But what we're primarily looking at is getting the tall stuff out of the garden so that the plants have opportunity to use the nutrients that are in the soil instead of feeding the grass and the dandelions and the lamb's quarters and the little maple trees and other things that are coming up where we don't want them. And I'm going to walk down to the weed pile here in a second with all that will fit in my right hand, since I'm holding the camera so delightfully in my left. And but I get kind of started and I have a hard time stopping. But there's the basil. I'll show you some other stuff here in a minute. Here's my weed pile. There's this huge weed pile. And I'll just walk down to the end of the garden here so that you can see where the weed pile is. There's our beautiful onions that will be an awesome harvest in a few weeks when the tops start dying back and they tell us that there are onions down there in the ground. But there they are. We've got some Brussels sprout plants going. There's a beautiful little nasturtium that I'm hoping will give us some pretty little flowers later on. This is where I worked in the garden yesterday. We have some little summer squash coming. If the rain doesn't drown them all, there they are, right there. 1, 2, buckle my shoe. So we've got those started. We've got 1, 2, 3 plants with some little guys going. This one has some blossoms, but no fruit yet, but that's okay. We've got all summer. So this zucchini and summer squash coming. We've got some pumpkins growing, some nice big blossoms. Hopefully we'll get 1 or 2 or more to do pumpkin puree for all kinds of healthy things. There's another volunteer tomato, but I'm going to pull that one because we need to not get carried away with the volunteers being here. We like them, but in this particular case we want it in a different place. But we've got some buttercup squash, and there's some bugs in there pollinating, I hope. Not going to worry too much about it until leaves start disappearing, but our lovely overabundance of rain has taken its toll. But Hopefully we'll have some sunshine now for a few weeks and things will jump out of the ground. And in amongst the weeds here, there's some parsley. There. And the plants go out arm's reach across the row. This looks like, oh, my labels didn't last very well. But there's the plant, and there's the weeds around it. Some grass in there that we need to get out. Well, that kind of looks like oregano, but we'll figure it out. And I showed you the basil, so we'll... Oh, here's a volunteer tomato with some blossoms on it already. How exciting is that? Have some tomatoes on here. Not too far in the future. Be looking forward to that. Most folks like tomatoes. So when you've finished your few minutes in the garden, and it could be as little as 5 minutes, I'm not fussy. But here's the herbs in this row. And then we've got some greens going here. Rhubarb chard. There's some mixed greens down here. There's the chard coming. Looking good. Needs some sunshine. Here's some more volunteer tomatoes with blossoms on them. Here's some mixed greens. And if somebody came through and pulled a few here and there for thinning, I think our United Way neighbors are going to help out with that. The big deal is that we do want to keep track of how much gets harvested. We have grant writers and grant money, and part of the funds, or how much funds we get, depends on how much we harvest to feed ourselves and our neighbors. So that's important. So this Swiss chard here, here's lettuce, there's the greens, there's the lettuce, and when you thin, you can either cut or pull. Here's some where the leaves have kind of decomposed, but just pull some, and you can take this home and clean it, cut the roots off, and have yourself a nice little microgreen salad. Here's the this is Black Seed Simpson leaf lettuce. These are the romaines, and when they're thinned, they will come up in bigger heads and make those nice, beautiful romaine lettuces that we all love so much for a Caesar salad. The ground is really soft in the garden right now because of all the rain, and but we do have some areas where nothing is coming up, either because we didn't plant anything there or it didn't grow. We did an experiment with some okra seeds. There's the okra plant right there. There might be 1 or 2 plants in here, but behind that, further down the row, I know we didn't plant anything. We can do some succession planting of some things that are more popular, like the lettuces and green beans, which I will show you in a minute. And there's a broccoli plant that came up on its own and has already gone to blossom and seed. It not being a It was probably a hybrid, which means the seeds that grow will grow one parent or the other. And here's our green beans. They're up and going, not blossoming yet, but they should be soon if they get a little bit of warm and sun. I've got several rows of that. They're easy to spot in the garden. We have quite a bit of open space. If you have a suggestion of what we might want to plant, you can certainly do that. Suggestions are always entertained. Not always followed, but always entertained. Here's our pole beans, climbing up on the hoop nicely as they're supposed to. Some more on this side. We tried some peas. We're not sure how they're going to go since they're generally a cool weather vegetable, but we'll see. They will or they won't. And here my garden partner Sally has worked, and we've got cabbages heading. Robin's flower pot was very generous with their donation of seedlings. And these cabbages, the tomatoes, the Brussels sprouts down at the end, we're all part of that. We've got some beets going. Here's the tomatoes that we planted on purpose. We'll need to get out here with some string and tie things up and maybe do a little bit of pruning. But they're already blossoming. So the tomato harvest is coming, people. We all like that. We've got cherries, we've got slicers, all kinds of goodies. We harvested the broccoli the other day because it was ready, and they're already putting out some new shoots. We'll let those go for a few days, maybe a week or so. We'll keep an eye on them and see how they do. We have dill coming. This is borage. And if anyone has a use for that, you can come harvest anytime. They're pretty blossoms. I saw a YouTube, oops, do the right side here, get the camera on it, not the, where they picked these blossoms and put them in ice cubes. They were beautiful. Just a suggestion. We planted carrots in here, and there are some, thankfully. Glad to see them. But we also have some dill that volunteered to come up, and we'll let that go as well. But again, here's the little weeds. Just kind of tease them out of there. Because the roots of the weeds are taking nutrients away from the vegetables that we want to grow. More carrots in here. I'm going to go ahead and pull these great big weeds. When the carrots have grown a little bit more, we'll thin those. Have some baby carrots. But these beds up here are an area of the garden that I'm thinking about possibly doing some perennial herbs. The dill likes to seem to come on by itself. There's even some in here with the carrots, if you want to zoom in on that. But to put the herbs up here, the ones that come back every year will. The ones that will seed themselves will come back every year, like the dill. But sage, parsley, there's a few others. But we'll do some things in there, and then some pollinators. I'd like to see some natives. I have some red columbine that I plan on bringing to the garden, because we would like the bees to come around and pollinate our tomatoes and cucumbers. There's the cucumbers, they're coming. But when Sally came and cultivated, she left some of the volunteers. There's some, looks like thyme or oregano. growing between the plants. When Miss Margaret was planting with me, she randomly planted some nasturtiums here and there. I've got some scarlet runner beans coming on this side of the hoop. I think we planted some more morning glories in there because they just look nice going along the fence. And speaking of along the fence, if you're not sure of yourself as far as weeding in among the plants, you can certainly pull right along the fence. The grass from the lawn kind of encroaches. Just pull it up by the roots, shake some of the dirt out of it, and go put it in the weed pile. And because of the wet weather, the weeds also have quite a bit of dirt on their roots. So we're not carting them away as we normally do, because I would like to keep the dirt in the garden where it belongs. Anyone that has a real desire to compost, I believe that if we have the bins or a turner or anything like that, that you would like to bring to the garden, we can find a spot for that. And I think I've probably run my mouth enough by now. And because you can pause this video and not stop watching anytime you want, I will call it all done. Welcome to the community garden, with emphasis on community. Have a great day.